Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to pull out the crucial knowledge from, well, pretty dense sources, making you instantly smarter. You, the learner, you're here to cut through all the noise, right? Grab those key insights, get those aha moments, but without getting totally bogged down.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into a really foundational text for modern business. Eric Ries, the Lean Startup. You shared some key excerpts, and our mission really is to boil this whole philosophy down to its absolute core. Give you a quick, but, thorough understanding.
Think of it as your shortcut to a pretty game-changing approach. We've got Ries's own words, endorsements, explanations of his main ideas. Okay, let's get into it. What makes the Lean Startup so, well, pivotal? Where do we even start?
I think the best place to start is where it came from. What problem was Ries actually trying to solve? He was a programmer. He kept seeing this pattern, people pouring tons of effort, like incredible work, into products that just failed, didn't connect with the market.
Oh, yeah. That feeling building something nobody actually wants. It's a common pain point, isn't it? So what was his answer to that?
Well, his big goal, his mission really became to improve the success rate of new products, innovative ones, worldwide. It wasn't just like an academic thing for him. It felt like a real deep need to find a better way.
And this search for a better way, it led him to some pretty unconventional methods, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about IMVU.
Yeah, IMV is the perfect story here. I mean, by traditional standards, what they did first looked completely wrong. Like textbook, don't do this. They launched what he calls a minimum viable product, an MVP, super early.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it had bugs. And believe it or not, they asked people to pay for it right from the start.
Wow, okay. Bugs and charging, that sounds risky.
It does. And then they just iterated like crazy, releasing updates constantly.
I can almost hear the business school professors kind of groaning. So what was the logic behind this, apparent chaos?
The core idea was learning, fast learning, above all else. Their whole approach was built on super fast development cycles, really paying attention to what customers did, not just what they said they wanted, and a very rigorous, almost scientific way of making decisions.
So constant experiments, constant adjustments.
Pretty much. A state of continuous adaptation.
Okay, that sets the stage. Now, the book itself, it lays out 5 core principles for the Lean Startup. Let's walk through those.
Right. So the first one is entrepreneurs are everywhere.
Okay.
Now, this isn't just the classic image, the garage startup. Ries really broadens that definition. It's anyone creating new products, services under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
Extreme uncertainty, so that's key.
Exactly. And this is a big deal because it means the lean startup stuff isn't just for startups. It works in big companies, nonprofits. Anywhere you have that uncertainty, it's a mindset, really.
That's a powerful idea. It's not the job title, it's how you operate. Okay, what's principle number 2?
Number 2, entrepreneurship is management. Yeah. A startup isn't just about a cool idea. It's an institution, and it needs a specific kind of management, one designed for growth when things are really uncertain. Traditional management focuses on executing known plans efficiently. It just doesn't work when you're still figuring things out.
Right. You can't use a fixed map for uncharted territory. Makes sense. Principle 3.
Third is validated learning. This is huge. The main goal of a startup. Learn how to build a sustainable business.
Learn how, okay.
And it's not just about opinions or guessing. It's about rigorously testing your assumptions, using frequent experiments to see what actually works, what part of your vision resonates.
So it's like replacing gut feelings with actual data from the real world?
Exactly. Validated learning is the antidote to just building something based on assumptions.
Yeah.
You find out if people really want it.
Moving beyond desk work, proving market fit. And that flows right into the 4th principle, doesn't it? The famous build, measure, learn loop.
Yep, that's the engine. The core activity of a lean startup. You build something small, an MVP, based on an idea. You measure how customers react. Then you learn from that data.
And decide whether to change direction.
Right, pivot. Or, if you're on the right track, persevere. The absolute key is making this loop go as fast as possible.
Faster cycles mean faster learning.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's not about shipping sloppy stuff. It's about the fastest way to test a core belief with real people.
Build, measure, learn. Got it. The cycle for navigating the fog. And the 5th, final principle.
The 5th is innovation accounting.
Okay, accounting. How does that fit in?
Well, traditional accounting, revenue, profit, those are lagging indicators. They don't really show progress in the early, uncertain stages. Innovation accounting is a new way to measure progress for innovators. It focuses on tracking validated learning, setting milestones based on what you learn, prioritizing work that actually helps you figure out the sustainable business model.
So instead of just tracking, say, units shipped.
Yeah, you might track like the conversion rate on a new landing page experiment or the retention rate of users you got through a specific channel, things that show you're learning what works.
Measuring learning, not just output. Got it. That's a fundamental shift. Now, Reese also talks a lot about why startups fail, especially using traditional methods. What's the main issue he sees?
The core problem is that inherent uncertainty we talked about. The allure of a good plan, a solid strategy, thorough market research. It feels safe, right? Because that works in stable, established businesses.
Yeah, it seems like the responsible thing to do.
But for a startup, you're in uncharted territory. You often don't really know who your customer is yet or exactly what the product should be. Trying to stick rigidly to a big upfront plan, it's often just wrong.
So all that careful planning can actually blind you, lead you efficiently down the wrong road.
Exactly. He calls it achieving failure, flawlessly executing a plan that was doomed from the start.
Ouch. Achieving failure. That resonates.
Yeah. The lean startup instead uses that read and react approach.
Yeah.
You're constantly course correcting based on the validated learning from the build, measure, learn loop.
That loop is like the steering wheel then.
It is. It lets you navigate that fog, make informed calls about whether to pivot, make a big strategic change, or persevere on the current path.
Okay, so pivoting isn't failure, it's learning.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Ries broadens the definition of entrepreneur. He tells a story about someone called Mark.
Yeah, Mark. He wasn't a typical startup founder. He was a general manager inside a big company. He had the job of creating new ventures within that company. He had resources, a vision. He was even okay with risk, but something was missing.
What was missing?
He had all the ingredients, basically, but no recipe. No clear process for turning those innovative ideas into actual successful businesses.
So even inside a big corporation, you can be acting like an entrepreneur, facing that same uncertainty.
Absolutely. Ries calls them entrepreneurs. His point is, the lean startup principles work just as well for them. Mark's story shows that just having the idea and the budget isn't enough. You need the process.
And innovation here isn't just like inventing warp drive.
Right.
What counts?
Right, it's much broader.
Yeah.
Sure, scientific breakthroughs count. But so does just, repurposing existing tech in a new way, or coming up with a new business model, or finding a new way to reach customers.
So the key isn't the type of innovation.
It's the context. Operating under extreme uncertainty. That's what makes it a startup situation, differentiating it from, say, a regular small business where the path is clearer.
Like opening a standard coffee shop. New business, yes, but less uncertainty about the core model compared to something totally new.
Exactly. The coffee shop knows, generally, what works. Ries uses the example of Intuit's SnapTax team.
SnapTax from Intuit.
Yeah. They were inside this huge company, normal offices, salaries, the works. But they were acting like entrepreneurs. They were innovating how people did taxes using mobile phones.
That really drives it home. It's a mindset, a process, not about where you work or the size of the company. Okay, let's make this concrete. Validated learning in action. The book digs into IMVU's early days, their struggles, their pivot, what was their first big bet, and what happened.
Okay, so IMVU's initial plan was jump into the instant messaging market, which was already dominated by big players, their angle. Offer cool 3D avatars as an add-on to those existing platforms.
So trying to enhance the existing IM experience.
Right, and their core leap of faith assumptions were all about what features people would want and who would actually use it. They launched the first version and, well, Ries puts it bluntly, nothing happened.
Oof, all that work.
Yeah, they kept adding features, fixing bugs, but they just couldn't get real traction. People weren't sticking around or any.
So the initial vision just wasn't connecting.
Not like they thought. They tracked registrations and downloads closely. That was their early report card. But those numbers didn't translate into active users. They kept improving the product, but user behavior just stayed flat. So they realized they had to actually talk to potential users, figure out the disconnect.
And what did they find out from talking to people? What were the key insights?
Well, they started seeing this split. Teenagers, early adopters, they kind of like the 3D avatars, the customization. But more mainstream folks were just confused, didn't get the point. Then they tried an experiment based on some feedback, a single-player mode, and that bombed too. But the killer piece of feedback they got was something like, why do I have to invite my friends before I even know if this thing is cool?
That's huge. People didn't want to commit their friends to something they hadn't validated for themselves yet.
Exactly. And that led to the big aha moment, the huge realization.
What was it?
It was that their core concept, being an add-on, was fundamentally flawed. People didn't want to bolt on. They actually wanted a standalone IM network.
A whole new network. But didn't they just say people didn't want to invite friends?
That was the surprising part. Once it was its own thing, inviting friends became part of the experience, part of building their own space.
Right.
And even more surprising, they thought people would use it mainly with existing friends. Wrong again.
Really?
Yeah, a huge chunk of users were actually interested in meeting new people online, using the avatars as a way to connect.
Wow. So they had to completely rethink who their customer was and what the core value was.
Totally. And that is validated learning in action, understanding what customers truly value through experiments. Ries points out this is different from just, say, agile development. Agile can help you build the wrong thing really efficiently if your basic assumptions about value are off.
Right. You can be agile on the road to nowhere.
Exactly. They even did small experiments like changing website text, switching from 3D instant messaging to avatar chat, boosted signups and paying customers significantly.
Just changing the words.
Yeah. But not every experiment worked. They tried paying people to be virtual tour guides inside IMVU that failed. Show that not every idea pans out, even if you test it. The big takeaway for IMVU was people wanted to make new friends online, and the avatars made that easier and more fun.
That IMVU story is such a clear picture of build, measure, learn, and being willing to admit your first idea was wrong based on evidence. Okay, stepping back from IMVU, Ries talks about the startup itself being an experiment. What are the big questions that experiment is trying to answer?
Really, it boils down to two fundamental questions. First, should we even build this thing? And second, can we build a sustainable business around it? To answer those, you can't just rely on a big, grand plan. You have to break that plan down into its core assumptions, its hypotheses, and test them.
And he gives some great examples of testing those assumptions early, right? Like Zappos.
Oh yeah, Zappos is classic. The founder, Nick Swinmurn, didn't build a giant warehouse and website first.
What did he do?
He went to local shoe stores, took pictures of shoes, put them online. Someone ordered, he'd go buy the shoes himself and mail them out.
Seriously, like a personal shopper.
Pretty much. A concierge MVP, they call it.
Yeah.
It let him test the absolute core question: will people actually buy shoes online? Before investing millions. The learning from those first few customers was gold.
Testing the demand before building the factory. Smart. He also used a hypothetical example, an HP volunteer program.
Right. He framed it in terms of hypotheses, the value hypothesis. Why aren't employees volunteering now? What's the value proposition for them? And the growth hypothesis. If this works for a few, how will it spread?
Okay.
His suggestion: don't launch company-wide, start small, maybe a dozen long-term employees. See if the basic idea resonates with them. If it bombs with them, you've learned something vital, cheap, before a big rollout. You can adjust or pivot.
And it's not just startups. Even big successful companies can mess this up. The Kodak Gallery story.
Yeah, Scott Cook from Intuit tells that one. Kodak Gallery focused massively on the engineering, building cool online photo features.
Sounds reasonable.
But they did it before really validating if enough customers wanted it badly enough to pay, or if the business model worked. Cook realized they were doing the work backward, building it before they knew if they could sell it or make it viable.
Build first, ask questions later. Often a bad strategy.
Definitely. You need to figure out the selling and making it viable part first, or at least in parallel.
And there was another low-tech MVP example, VLS Street Laundry.
Yeah, VLS. Instead of building laundromats, they just set up mobile laundry carts on the street. Super simple.
Like a food truck for laundry?
Kind of. It let them talk directly to people, see what services they wanted, what prices worked, get instant feedback, all without massive upfront cost. Quick iteration based on real demand.
Amazing how simple some tests can be. He even applied this thinking to a government agency, the CFPB.
He did, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. His point was, even launching something like that, a huge government initiative, could be treated like a startup experiment. Identify the core assumptions. What problems are you solving? Will your proposed solutions work? Then test them small scale first. Maybe a pilot hotline in one city, or a limited program in one area, before the massive national rollout. Learn early, adjust, avoid potentially huge waste if the initial assumptions are wrong.
It really shows the breadth of this thinking. It's a framework for tackling uncertainty wherever you find it. Okay, let's circle back one more time to validated learning. Why is it so much better than just detailed planning when you're starting something new?
Because, fundamentally, Planning relies on prediction, and for new ventures, the future is radically uncertain. Detailed plans work best when you have a long, stable track record to base predictions on. Startups don't have that luxury. They operate on what Ries calls those leap of faith assumptions.
Leap of faith, those core beliefs about value and growth.
Exactly. Those are the things you absolutely must test. They're the riskiest parts of your whole venture.
So instead of spending months writing a 50-page business plan filled with guesses,
You spend that time running quick experiments to test those critical guesses. Find out if they hold water in the real world.
makes sense. He used Facebook's early days as an example, right? People criticized the lack of a business model.
They did. Critics were like, where's the money? But Zuckerberg and the team had incredibly strong evidence validating their key hypotheses, the value hypothesis.
Yeah.
People loved using it. It was engaging, connecting them. That was validated by usage metrics. The growth hypothesis. It was spreading like wildfire through users inviting friends. That was validated too.
So even without revenue, they were proving the core assumptions were right. People wanted it, and it could grow.
Exactly. That validated learning was arguably more important at that stage than a detailed revenue plan.
And he contrasts this with a more traditional product mindset.
Yeah, the traditional view might say, we have this brilliant technology, feature X. People obviously want it because it's superior.
Right, the build it and they will come fallacy.
Whereas the lean startup approach asks, forget the specific tech for a second. Is there even a group of customers out there who desperately want the problem solved that our product addresses? Let's prove that first. The really successful entrepreneurs, Ries argues, aren't the ones who stubbornly stick to plan A. They're the ones who are masters of adaptation, constantly learning from reality and adjusting their strategy based on that validated learning.
This has been incredibly clarifying, a really deep dive into the heart of the lean startup. Okay, to wrap things up, what are the absolute key takeaways you want our listener, you, to walk away with?
I think the main thing is this. The lean startup gives you a systematic way to deal with the crazy uncertainty of starting something new. It does that by focusing relentlessly on validated learning, using that build, measure, learn loop over and over, and really committing to testing your biggest assumptions, your leap of faith beliefs, instead of just trusting a plan made in a vacuum.
And crucially, this isn't just for tech bros in garages, right?
Not at all. Whether you're actually in a garage or you're trying to launch a new project inside a giant company or working for a nonprofit or even, in government, these principles apply. Understanding what your customer truly values and systematically testing how you'll reach them and grow. That helps anyone, anywhere, increase their odds and avoid building things nobody wants.
So as you, our listener, go back to your day, think about what you've heard, what's one final question, maybe a challenge you'd leave them with?
Well, in this world that seems to be getting more uncertain all the time, ask yourself, how can you apply these lean startup ideas to what you're working on? Professional stuff, sure, but maybe even personal projects. Take a minute. What are the core leap of faith assumptions behind your current efforts? And what's the quickest, simplest way you could test one of those assumptions right now, in the real world? Get some actual data, some learning, so you can adapt and avoid, that trap of achieving failure.
Powerful things to think about. Thank you so much for breaking all this down for us today. Really insightful. And to you, our listener, we definitely recommend checking out Eric Ries's The Lean Startup itself if you want to go even deeper. There's a lot more there. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.